Hello my friends, Jacob's here one more time. Thank you for pressing the play button, for hitting that like, for subscribing and sharing and doing all the stuff that you do. I like to put on a little bit of a, kind of a jovial demeanor so that you can take this medicine in a good way, because we got some really pretty awful things to talk about. Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Man who was famously known for his, kiss my buttocks match, where he would take his pants down and he would force people to literally kiss his butt in the middle of the ring to demean them, which is actually sort of like a ritual in occult circles.
His 1865 study, The Worship of the Generative Powers, Thomas Wright explains that the initiation ceremony of the Knights Templar would conclude with a kiss to the anus of the initiate. As I imagine most of you, my students, know, the Knights Templar was an illuminated organization which operated from 1119 until ? In any case, that reference to the analingual initiation ceremony is here perverted by modern-day sexual sadism, more extreme initiation than the Templars practiced.
Well, a lot of the WWE used to be WWF when I worked there. And before you start saying all sorts of, like, oh, you worked for WWE, I did for like 2 years. It was like 2.5 years I did. Didn't make that much money when I started. It was like 75 grand. I think I left there making 125 grand. Believe me. And I brought in the highest ratings and the highest reviews the company had ever seen. That's a true story. With a bunch of wrestlers that maybe people didn't really know that well. In my short term there, I created this group called the Right to Censor. This was kind of like Vince's idea. He wanted to come up with something. And you got to remember something. I'm a man of God, and I'd work there, and I'd be on the plane reading the Bible. It was weird that I was there to begin with. This nobody. I was like this nothing guy. But here, I felt so compelled to kind of tell the world, if you will, just the corruption and the terrible things that they were allowing their children to see. I came on at the height of when Vince Russo was there, and it was like the height of bra and panties matches. They'd go in and they'd wrestle in Jello. It was really just like the lowest of the low, and they were getting crushed in the ratings. And why wouldn't you? Because you were demoralizing people. So I come in and I brought in this group, and I started weekly. They would come out and they would tell the world just how incredibly corrupt it was, and how if they be corrupt, judgment and correction was coming. The allegations against Vincent Kennedy McMahon are so outrageous and so monstrous that it's like I knew that they would come out. I've said this on previous shows. I'm sure if you've been here for a while, I've talked about this. I said it's not going to be long before this is going to come to you. It's going to come to you. I posted stuff about it on Twitter recently when there was the bloodline being cursed, and I said the fall of this house is going to be great. This is the year we're in. Ironic, huh? Yeah, to bring you up on this story, at first we heard a little while ago there was like $3 million being paid out, and then it was like $10 million, and all told, after the investigation from the company, the people that made it all about money and company funds, like supposedly he was using company funds to pay, the dime to all of these women that alleged that he raped them, defecated on them, beat them with sex toys named after wrestlers, forced them to be passed around, showed pictures of this terrible abuse and this terrible demeaning behavior to people that he knew. And the Wall Street Journal covered this, and the Post has covered this, and everybody's talking about the fact that Vince McMahon is he's under the microscope right now. If they be corrupt, coming mainstream. Strange to me, because I even modeled a character in my novel after Vince. When I worked there, I didn't fit in. They asked me to leave. I've told everybody on the channel, right? God places people in weird situations for a reason. And it just so happens when I was there, I basically said that judgment was coming. I would write these things, which I shared on X. You should really follow me on X. Because I on X, I can really create things and not get hit with this, that, and the other thing. Like, if you're creating something artistically, it's fair use, you could use it. But if I actually showed you the roll-in that I did, it would be hit, and, it would be a problem. They wouldn't allow it to be shown in certain countries and everything, because that's just greed, right? That's just the way the machine is, especially when it's the WWE, which looks like the 333, right? Of course. Everything's about being inverted. The irony is, I'm going to still air it right now. I'm just going to show you the clips. I'm going to read you the things that Stevie and Ivory, and there was the Godfather, who used to be a pimp, and he'd come out with all these women, and I didn't like that. So brought him into the group. He became the good father, somebody who stood for morality. The porn star Val Venus. All these guys were just amazing talents. He no longer was a porn star. He became a person in a committed relationship. God places me in the midst of all this madness. And I had the audacity to write these scripts and to call out Vince and to tell the world just how corrupt it is. I come into this ring each and every night against the poison that the WWE offers. Each and every one of you, as I look down upon you at the sea of misled, ignorant, hopelessly lost souls. The message has been clear from the very beginning. Think about it. Your children shouldn't be subjected to half-naked women. Your children shouldn't be subjected to the vulgarity that comes out of the mouth of the so-and-so WWE superstars. You boo when you should be cheering what is right.
A special delivery for Mr. Vince McMahon.
In an effort to desensitize millions and millions of our fans, the WWF has force-fed every one of you corruption, vulgarity, greed, keeping each and every one of you hungry for your next plate of depravity, vulgarity. With every bra and panties match, with every hell in the cell, we lose a little bit of ourselves that we're never going to get back. Now, we will continue to fight the good fight, but the World Wrestling Federation will continue to make heroes out of egotists, icons out of vulgarity, and especially continue to exploit the female talent for ratings, money, and more. We refuse to turn a blind eye to this disgrace. And with that being said, if you are not with us, you're against us. Almost exactly 24 years ago from today. How strange is that? Almost as strange as the fact that just this week, I've done a bunch of videos on the old 1776, 1803, all of these revolutionary wars, because this is the day that we're coming into. And this is what the world's trying to project to you and trying to get you all to think. Everybody's putting out their videos about how, your sons and daughters are going to be now drafted to go off to fight. And all of this stuff that people are trying to just, we're letting fear run the roost. And the problem is, I don't think people realize that it's not going to go in that direction, because God's here. God's working things out for the betterment of all of us.
No. I'm glad you asked me that question. No, I'm not having any second thoughts about representing President Trump. It is the proudest thing I could ever do. What I'm having second thoughts about is the license that I stand here with that the people in there are supposed to have. I have not spoken because I respect my ethics while I'm on trial. But let me now speak about what has happened. I have sat on trial after trial for months in this state, the state of New York. Attorney General Letitia James, and now this. Weeks. Why? Because President Trump is leading in the polls, and now we see what you get in New York. So don't get it twisted, whoever asked me that question. I am so proud to stand with President Trump. But I am not proud to stand with what I saw in that courtroom.
So he places like a weirdo like me in the midst of something to call it out, almost as if Vince McMahon was being judged and I was getting paid for it. It's very weird. Before I tell you how weirder it is, in the chapter of my book that basically called all of this stuff that's happening today with Vince, it's strange to me that all of this perversion, all this vulgarity, all of this stuff is actually coming to light. Finding stuff out about celebrities like Diddy and all of these people and all these horrible things. And allegations against big name pastors like T.D. Jakes and more. Hashtag if they be corrupt is going to be a shirt. I think I'm going to do it. But all the symbolism and all the things that come together right now with the 1776, with this Revolutionary War, and of all things, the very video that I used to go back in time and show you that this was what was going to happen, it has Vince McMahon on the thumbnail. Take a look. And in that video, I talked about how incredibly interesting it was that once again we had Vince McMahon and we had Donald Trump, the two of them, being brought up on charges. That's when it began, and now we have the same thing happening today. Once again with the Carroll lawsuit. Trump, actually, the big news is, he just stood up and he walked out. He was done with the court. Closing arguments were coming between Carroll and Trump. Trump just got up and walked out in the middle of the comments. If Trump is a corrupt man, he will end up being brought to correction. If he is not a corrupt man, he will not be. I mean, that's just basically the way it is. If God wants to use this man, he's going to use this man. I have a feeling he's going to be fine. I don't have a feeling that the WWE, which is now owned by TKO. Remember, I had that weird dream about how the WWE was going to be sold? Remember how strange that was? They said, I had a dream, Vince. Everybody was walking around with all these Crown Royale patches. And I thought of Crown Royale. And I said, I bet you WWE ends up going to Saudi. Action with Crown Jewel. Yeah, I had a dream. I've shared dreams. I had a dream about about all this stuff going down, which was really weird. Just the other night, I had a dream, and I don't know, I can't remember all of it, but there were people, and they were wearing, they were wrestlers, and they were wearing they had sponsorships, and one of the big sponsorships that was on this guy's right shoulder was Crown Royale, the alcohol, Crown Royale. And then I wake up in the morning, and I'm like, oh, Vince is back. Guess what? Vince McMahon came back. 17, January 7th, Vince McMahon comes back. He's in charge. Why? To sell WWE. To who? They have their deal, of course, the Crown Royal, and of course now TKO owns them. But who's to say that the stock doesn't take a dump and then Saudi Arabia comes in and buys it? I don't know. That dream would then come 100% true, which is weird. Because God does speak to us in dreams, but, sometimes dreams are just weird. You had some bad pizza or something. But in this video, I talk about how, just how into the occult, and all that stuff Vince McMahon seemed to be, with The Undertaker and everything else. And we see the cross promotion between The Undertaker and Donald Trump, where Donald Trump was entering to The Undertaker's theme. This bell sound, this Liberty Bell sound, this revolution that's going on, this thing that they're trying to push us all into thinking is going to literally happen. On February 14th, 2023, I put out this right here about how strange it is that they put a bunch of rattlesnakes on the Baphomet symbol. No, it's not the Baphomet, but it looks like the Baphomet from the angle it's being shot. When you take a look at it, here, take a closer look. But the rattlesnakes are there, swirling around, doing all this. You know what the rattlesnake stands for? You know what it stands for. Don't tread on me and all that stuff. That became it was like they were saying, this is what it's going to be. Oh, forget about that. Why don't we remind ourselves how I reminded everybody today, how great Governor Abbott is, because everybody's trying to make him out like, oh yes, he's doing the right thing by the text. You know what he's not doing? He's not doing the right thing by the United States, supposedly, as he's just basically facilitating everybody being bused to other areas. This is like some kind of a major operation that's going on. Either really there is already a civil war at root and, this is what's happening, or something else is going on. It seems to me like they're all in it together. It seems to me, though, that maybe there's going to be some kind of a change. I mean, when your own state puts out 666 new laws. Yeah, that happened on September 1st. Weirder still that, if you can't afford to live and you have to, pitch a tent somewhere, you won't be able to. Even though Texas is like the great outdoors and there's so much space, if they find you, you can get in some big trouble. No longer can homeless people have shelters or build shelters or live in shelters. That's one of the laws. Yeah, 666 of them. But probably nothing weird going on there. Probably that, it's an arbitrary number. I'm sure nobody thought that would freak people out, but they want everybody freaked out. They want everybody thinking that this is what's going to happen. I have a feeling that all of this stuff, I have a feeling is going to backfire on some bad people. I mean, ultimately, you want to do the right thing, right? You want to do the right thing. So I'm trying to, because this is what I do now. I come on here and instead of just saying, oh, this is what's going to happen, because this is what's being projected and told to everybody, I take it and I say, no, corruption's going to be revealed. We're going to show the world that you took a dump on somebody's head to humiliate her. That's one of the allegations against Vince McMahon. These are just terrible, perverse, sick crimes. Things that I said that they were saying, things that I wrote in my novel years ago, saying that they would be revealed. Let me just read this to you, because this is strange. Now, if you don't know anything about the novel, you can go to Amazon.com. I'll play the trailer at the end of this so you can watch it if you're new, and if you're not new, stick around and stay in a live chat and everything else and watch the trailer again, because I'm telling you something. There's something to this. So I modeled this character. His name's Dr. Vince Manis. He has a swagger, kind of big guy, scary, intimidating guy, and he's a little messed up. The lead character, Thomas. It's weird because Thomas is the name of the guy that's on the deck clock all the time. But the lead character, Thomas, I can't give you all the ins and the outs. No spoilers here. I'm just going to read this one scene. There's a scene between the two of them. He's evaluating Thomas. He's not the best guy. He really isn't. Why, Thomas, is what you have to say so hard to believe? He asks sarcastically as he documents the conversation. These are the very words Manis believes will convince the board that Thomas needs further study. You can't hear my words because they aren't yours. You make your words and they are not to be trusted. But my words are to be trusted because they're no longer my own, Thomas declares with authority. Now, this was a picture of the manifestation of the sons of God. When I wrote this novel, that's like Thomas was a character. It would be like a representation of Christ on earth, just to put that in perspective. Excuse me? What do you mean your words aren't your own? Manis licks his lips from saliva that forms in the corners of his mouth. His case is being made for him, he believes. Thomas's eyes become red. A controlled anger begins to build inside him. His words are as fierce as they are pointed. You're not here for me. If you were here for me, you would know who I am, but you don't know who I am, nor have you ever known who I am. That is why you cannot hear me, Doctor. That is why you're trying to condemn me. He snaps his teeth together like a lion tearing into raw meat. Manis looks up from his paper proudly. Thomas is playing right into his hands. You think I'm going to condemn you, Thomas? That I'm here to help you, not hurt you, and motions for the camera to be turned on. From the other side, the two orderlies oblige. Keep it off, Thomas shouts as he leans further to stare into Manis's dark soul. What you do now, you will regret one day. And you will suffer greatly for it. You will wish you had heard the words that are spoken today. Is that so? Manis says with sarcasm. I am telling you the truth. If you knew who it was that was sitting before you, you would weep because of all the evil you've done in your life. Manis grinds his teeth and rolls his eyes. What are you talking about? It will fall from the sky around you. It will show the world the truth of who you really are. And then you will die. Thomas snatches Manis's hands as a mongoose would the neck of a cobra. Manis cannot pull his hands away. Because the light is here, Doctor. The light is here. I mean, you want to talk about chills. You want to talk about chills. I put that thing out on X, and I was like, it was almost like I had the revelation that literally, God kind of placed me there so that God could then tell, the world that this corruption is going to be revealed. And here we are. I find it interesting. But what I find more interesting is what I had to say.
How is this possible? The guy who shaves Vince McMahon's hair, Donald Trump, who, on the show, we know I have some suspicions of where this may be going in the future. How's it possible that he's, how is he not being revealed to be the person that they're now saying that he could be, if he was? I heard stories. But once again, locker room talk, right? I don't know if any of it was true. Heard stories. I went to one of his Christmas parties. When I left, I saw something that I thought was interesting, but it wasn't anything that was like horrible, But they're stories, right? So you hear these stories again and again and again and again. How do you have this powerful guy in this testosterone-driven, right, business? How do you not think that could go wrong somehow? You have all that power. You have all that money. I don't know. I guess we're going to find out.
Usually you would see it. You would have 1776, which is interesting because you're going to find that all this is connected to the Liberty Bell. So Vince McMahon and Trump, very close, both of them being indicted, dealing with this stuff is very strange at the exact same time. And it has to do with, this is an interesting part of it, is it has to do with a lot of like women he paid out. He did some bad stuff. Turns out a couple of years ago, Vince was like, I guess, funneling money to the campaign too. And they were like questioning that. So it's everybody's coming down on him. I'd like to remind people that Vince McMahon and Donald Trump had a hair versus hair match at WrestleMania 23. I've talked about this on the show. Now this is where you get the goosebumps and everything gets really crazy. It was basically you had Donald Trump and you had Vince McMahon, and both of them had a wrestler, and the main event would be those two wrestlers fighting each other in the ring. Okay, whoever lost the match, the winner of the match, the manager will say, whether it's Donald or Vince, get to shave the hair of the other one. It's strange, because let's just take a look at the wrestlers for a second. Vincent Kennedy McMahon, that's his middle name, Kennedy. A lot of people like to connect him to the Kennedys for whatever reason. His wrestler was named Umaga. Umaga is spelled U-MAGA. That's quite a coincidence, you would think. So here you have a picture of MAGA being partnered with a Kennedy on one side of the ring. And then on the other side of the ring, you have Bobby. That's Robert. It's a nickname for Robert. And Donald Trump. Bobby's last name is Lashley. When you think of Lash, 40 lashes. 40 being WrestleMania, the day before the eclipse in 2024. Very strange. So we have Bobby and Trump, and we have Kennedy and Umaga. And U-MAGA. I think that's coincidental. Because it kind of makes it look like maybe it's not a real fight. It kind of makes it look like maybe it's not a real fight. Maybe on either side, whoever wins, it's still Trump and Kennedy and Trump. But it makes me question, it's like, is this whole election thing, are the two of them are going to come together? Is that what it means? Or is it going to be kind of one of those operations. So, now WrestleMania 23, this is weird. It took place on April Fool's Day 2007. This WrestleMania, coincidentally, was the only one right after it that took place on April Fool's Day as well, 17, which is strange. Because this year, WrestleMania was on April Fool's Day too. April 1st. Weird, right? So, Kennedy ends up getting his hair shaved. Yeah. And the weird part is, in that same match, and this is where Andrew came in, because he shared this on X, and there's his Twitter right there, next stop, ... Andrew. Bobby Kennedy, Mr. Kennedy, because that's what he was known as in wrestling, his name was Mr. Kennedy, he won the Money in the Bank. And I thought to myself when I was talking to Andrew, I said, you know, if he ends up working for Trump, that would be like winning the Money in the Bank, right? He'd probably get a lot of money and everything else. And then Andrew's like, yeah. But then not too long later, he lost all his money and he was ridiculed and thrown out completely. So Mr. Kennedy in wrestling seemed to be used. Will Mr. Kennedy this time be used? Who knows? It's just all too coincidental for me. It's just all too strange. But it gets even weirder. No, this is freaky. So WrestleMania, I told you, takes place that night of the Great American Eclipse. Take a look. There it is, the day before the eclipse. The day before the eclipse. It goes from April 6th to April 7th. The eclipse is the next day. But look at how the logo is a bell. A bell that I've been talking about a lot on the channel. A bell. A bell that you see the Trumpster holding. Right? I mean, I don't know if any of this means what it could mean, but it's coincidental. Because that bell, well, that bell has a lot to do with some change, if you will, that took place in 1776. Tradition tells that the chime that changed the world was on July 8th, 1776. The same bell that Trump is holding, the same bell that is the logo for WrestleMania 40. 40 years, you enter the promised land. 40 days of Christ being tempted and tested. That's why I always leave out the possibility. Could this be the manifestation of Christ on a much bigger scale? Could it be a wonderful thing, even though I have trepidation in my heart? Jesus taught that our words have power. That if we had faith the size of a mustard seed, that we could say to the mountain, be cast into the sea. That we could say to the system, not this time. Not this time. Because the light is here. The light is here, as Thomas said. And this is a day that we will rejoice in it. Do you know the book of Revelation talks about how their strength comes from their song? That your very praise and your joy for putting your faith in more, for loving and trusting that it's going to be done the way God wants it done. This is an exciting spiritual battle that we're in. And I'm telling you, we can't fail. You know why? Because it's already finished. It was finished at the beginning. It was finished on the cross. And it's being finished right here, right now, in the midst of all of you. All right. Do me a favor if you want. Get a copy of the novel. I'm seriously, and if you've read it, please do go to Amazon, leave a review. I don't know if I'm going to ever end up getting an audiobook out. It just doesn't. There's something about it needing to be written and held onto and read and highlighted. I don't know. I'd rather you get this. And even if you don't like to read, I guarantee you, if you start, you will finish. I guarantee you just forget about flipping through Netflix for a half an hour. You read the first chapter, the second chapter. You watch. I think this is the day that we're in. It's very strange to hear all of that stuff about Vince McMahon falling from the sky and being shouted from the rooftops. How very corrupt and perverse. And that's weird. That's crazy. That's amazing. That's the Lord God above. All right. I love each and every one of you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
September 10th. Mars hangs closer to the Earth than it has in 6,000 years. Like the light that led men from the east to a child in a manger, it could well be a sign of good things to come. Thomas James shall be his name. The world will change because of him. In the small town of Bethel, in a time not unlike our own, a child with a great purpose is born. Years later, alienated by his peers and abused, Thomas suffers a devastating loss. When it appears he has nothing left to live for in the world, this is when his true calling begins. While trying to escape the sinister powers that be, a terrifying vision haunts him. Miraculous events seem to follow the peculiar young man as he struggles to come to terms with what he was born to do. The stage is set. The time is at hand. The truth will rise and a revolution will begin. The startling revelation of who Thomas James is, truly, will change the lives of those around him and set off a chain of events long ago foretold. There is more to this novel than one might think. Inside these pages hides a treasure just waiting to be discovered. So if you've ever wondered if there's more to life, or why it is we suffer, then this story will not only captivate you, it may just open your eyes to a truth that could set you free. Find out what is in us all that makes us heed the calling